Welcome to another episode of On the Issues with Alon Ben-Meir. Today's guest is Abdülhamit Bilici, a veteran journalist, editor, commentator, and media executive with over 25 years of experience in journalism, editorial leadership, and international affairs. He served as CEO of Zaman Media Group in Turkey until its seizure by the Turkish government in March 2016, after which he went into exile in the United States. In this episode, Alon and Abdülhamit discuss the current war on Iran's impact on Turkey, what role Turkey may play in trying to find an end to the current conflict, and how this and other regional conflicts impact Turkish domestic issues, particularly in relation to the Kurds.
Good morning, Hamid. Again,
Good morning.
to thank you so much for taking the time. We just looked into that, and last time you and I have a podcast was of February of 2000, of 2000, right?
2020.
2020, yeah, of course, 2020. That's what I know, 2000. Well, it's been a while, and I think it's a great. Thank you so much for renewing this. Specifically nowadays with the horrific development in the Middle East. So before we talk about Turkey itself, I'd like to ask you, what's your take so far? This war was a war of choice. United States was not imminently threatened by Iran. But I've been looking at the behind the scene. What has prompted Trump to take this major offensive at a time when it was completely unnecessary and when the negotiation was still going on? What's your understanding of what's happening?
Yeah, I try to understand, read the media reports, listen to press briefings of the leading figures of the administration, and it's not easy to grasp what is, if there is one reason or there is a good reasoning, because many people are saying different things about the reason of the attack to Iran. I think one of the most formidable explanation is the role of Netanyahu in leading or convincing Trump into that direction of attacking Iran, and especially the Secretary of State Rubio's last statement, public statement, I think tells a lot about the conditions that America decided to have that action.
Yes.
Rubio told that Israel was to attack, and instead of waiting Iran to respond, America joined, defining it as preemptive strike. So, of course, many people are questioning where is the sovereignty of the United States? I mean, why Israel decides if United States join such a war or not.
Yeah.
So, lots of speculations and questioning going on, especially in the base, the electorate of the Trump himself. I'm amazed with the disappointment and discussions taking place within the MAGA movement.
Mm-hmm.
They say we voted you in because you promised us there will be end to those wars in the world, interventions, nation building policies. So your focus will be, the America's focus will be inside America, the normal needs of the American people.
All right.
But now they say Trump doing just the opposite of what he promised.
Exactly.
So there are lots of questions, but I think that is especially when you look at the midterms approaching at the end of this year. I know Trump is said openly that we need to win those midterms. Otherwise, he is concerned that he will be impeached if
That's
they
right.
if they
Eh,
lose the if they lose the
The
if the
House,
Republicans lose the House.
right?
So there are lots of internal and international implications of this. But I think with the success, I mean, quote unquote, of the operation against Venezuela, Trump was emboldened
Yeah,
that there will be a similar operation, a kind of surgical operation, by getting, the top leader of a country, of a regime. In Venezuela, it worked overnight. And now there is a regime, the same regime, cooperating with the United States, and America has a lot of say on the management of the Venezuelan affairs, which is an important achievement, we can say. I think that sometimes success may lead you into wrong conclusions.
yeah,
So
but
they thought that we did in Venezuela, we can also do it in Iran, which is uh, very, very different in terms of geography, in terms of complexities, in terms of the regimes, etc. So now it seems uh, lots of uncertainties. American lives are at stake. Lots of people lost their lives in Iran. The leadership, lots of high-level leaders were, uh, I mean, killed
killed,
by
yes.
the Israeli-American operation. But it seems the regime is still intact, and the people, the Trump called Iranian people to rise up. So far, we did not see such signs. I mean,
Yeah, yeah, that's right. Now, let's break this down a little bit. Let me go back to, no. Yes, there were reports that, as a matter of fact, going in number of months, when Netanyahu made, not last time, but even before that, was only 6, 7, 8 weeks ago, that the main mission was to convince Trump that this was the right time to attack Iran because there is public unrest, the economy is down, the air defense has been weakened from the June of last year attack. And so from Netanyahu perspective, this was an opportunity to attack Iran when it is at its weakest state at this particular juncture. And I think that was a terrible miscalculation, as we are seeing now as the war is unfolding. Iran is holding its own, and it seemed to have the better prepared by far than 6 or 8 months, 9 months ago. They expected that this could happen, and so they have created all kind of system layers of leadership. If one leader is killed, there's already a successor in place. So I think that was a terrible miscalculation. And the other point you mentioned, which is very important, there was his domestic consideration. That is, Trump, there's no question, he's terrified of losing in the November election. Not only because he would be subject to impeachment, uh, because even if he's impeached, the likelihood of the Senate to render a verdict is probably not yet. But he definitely there's the Epstein files. I mean, he wanted to distract the attention of the American public, but to go that far to accommodate Israel, to accommodate Netanyahu, uh, and send that kind of Amarada to the middle, to this kind of force to the Middle East. It is way beyond what could have been or should have been. So I think there's a significant miscalculation on the part of Trump, terrible miscalculation on the part of Netanyahu, and the thought that the people will rise, I think it's completely misplaced and misleading because there is no organized opposition in Iran today, in any kind, to actually rise up. There are no leadership, there are no preparation for that, and the military is very well prepared also to deal with domestic unrest should that happen. So you are absolutely right in all of these categories that you mentioned. Um, where do you see now this is going? And then I want to shift a little bit to Turkey. Where do you see this is going at this point? Iran is retaliating against half a dozen countries. It has caused significant damage in many different places, and they still seem to be determined to continue this campaign until the United States stops bombing along with Israel, and they're prepared to sit down and negotiate. That's what the foreign minister has said. Where do you see that happening? Being celebrated journalist for so long. What do you anticipate to happen?
I think, I mean, it is a 1 million question to predict. Everything could change in hours, in a very short time. We are still at the early stages of this conflict. Although it's not a new conflict. It's a conflict of 47 years between United States, America, and Israel. So actors know each other very well, and there is an animosity for long time. But I think when I see the Trump's calculation was a quick victory, that they will get rid of the leader Khamenei, who was ruling the country since 1989, and he is in control of all critical things, intelligence, army, everything, economy, everything. So the calculation was, if we get rid of this leader, the Iranian system,
That will unravel.
there'll be disarray, and with this, the opposition or the people will take this opportunity to rise up,
Yeah.
and then Trump will declare victory, or someone, maybe Pahlavi or someone from the opposition, could replace the current regime. This is the calculation, but it seems, as you said, Iran, the regime prepared to have the names. I mean, they knew what happened in Hezbollah. When Israel attacked, they replaced the persons and the commanders right away, because they know that
Well, of course.
Israel is behind
Yeah.
all the people that would be replaced. So it seems the regime did not get dissolved. Instead, they are able to, yes, America, Israel penetrating and getting rid of a lot of uh, structures, the military structures of Iran, but Iran still is able to attack back, especially to American allies in the Gulf, and making life difficult not just for these small Gulf states, but the whole world, by creating, like now. I read from the report that the oil prices already jumped, and the natural gas prices jumped. So I think this luxurious life in Abu Dhabi, Doha, and other places is turning into something else.
Yeah.
So I think these allies of the United States will put pressure on Washington every day, more and more, to stop and to find a negotiated way to end the conflict. If that can continues for 1 week or 2 weeks or 3 weeks, that will be very difficult for Trump to continue, considering this international
Yeah.
pressure and the local domestic political aspects. And there is one element, when I compare this attack to Iran to the Bush attack to Iraq. At that time, United States was trying to convince United Nations, although with failure, the United States was able to bring together an allies of willing. So today, there is no such thing. Even United Kingdom, the closest ally of the United States, is questioning. And many European countries are openly against what America is doing. So all these are, I think, narrowing down the perspective of a quick victory for Trump.
Well, I mean, I think it was, like I said, absolutely miscalculation because, first of all, we know the structure here. Trump does not have any serious advisors who can tell him what's really going to happen should this campaign erupt, because he surrounded himself with the yes people, and I think they're all forgotten exactly what you mentioned. Decapitating the head of state does not produce a new government automatically. I think they fail miserably to study the internal dynamics within Iran itself. Will there be, in fact, an uprising? Who is going to lead such an uprising? So they have not paid much attention to the fact that it is not readily available. Once they killed Khomeini, everything is going to change. This is not going to be a quick victory. Exactly what you just said. It's not going to happen that way. The pressure, of course, on Trump as well as Israel will continue. U.S. allies, of course, the Gulf states who are now suffering from these attacks, that is going to continue to happen. But I want to sort of review two or three possible scenarios. Let's say this war going to go on for another 2 or 3 weeks. I think, from my perspective, as I see it, I think that Iran will be able to sustain itself for the next 2 or 3 weeks, and it will continue to be able to attack, albeit perhaps at a lesser degree, but it will continue to have enough missiles and enough drones to continue its defenses and its attack. And then the pressure on Trump continues as well. So he is going to could potentially a standoff. Somebody is going to have to blink. But of course, Foreign Minister of Iran already said, stop the hostilities, we can sit down and negotiate. That's a possible scenario. So somebody ought to blink first. And the second scenario, United States has more weapons, more missiles, more supplies, and continue. But already some members from the military establishment saying we have to be very careful because we are depleting these assets and we're going to need them perhaps someplace else. So Trump, in one form or another, I agree with you, is going to sooner or later face a dilemma, how to get out of this mess that he got into. All in all, no matter what happened, as I see it, it's bad for the United States. It's terrible for Israel, albeit Netanyahu thinks he can make some gains by weakening Iran. It doesn't Iran is a powerful country. They can renew their assets in no time. Once they have the means. They have even the resources to do just that. So now the question is, this attack has destabilized the region, and I want to go back now to where do you see Turkey falling into this messy situation? What is Erdogan been saying and doing in order to de-escalate the conflict?
Yeah, Turkey, is part of all critical problems, very much close to all the biggest crises of last 20, 30 years. So it is neighbor to Iraq. We had Iraqi war. It is neighbor to Syria. We had years of conflict there. It's very badly affected. Now it is Iran. So Iran is also a very important neighbor of Turkey. So it is some people in Turkey thinks that an attack to Iran, because of this proximity and because of the implications that it could lead, is kind of an attack to Turkey,
Mm-hmm.
because it could spill out a lot of
Out of control.
refugees, and a kind of instability, in next door. It is a loss of energy sources, which is Iran is an important supplier of energy for Turkey. And also there is this Kurdish element. Iran also has a Kurdish portion of its society, uh, and Turkey is sensitive about what will be the shape of future Iran or the future Kurdish parts of these countries in Syria, Iraq, and Iran, and it in itself, of course. So because of all these reasons, Turkey was following very closely what
Yes.
is happening and what will happen. And I mean, I'm not living in Turkey uh, since maybe for last 10 years, but I'm
Mhm.
closely following the
Of
media
course, yeah.
reports and what's happening there. I see they try to tell Trump privately and publicly that this is not a good idea to attack Iran, especially without a proper plan. I think Turkey, there are two scenarios. I mean, if there is a quick victory, Turkey could not get that badly affected. If as in the calculation of Trump, if with getting rid of Khamenei, we could have regime gone and a new, more America or the West-oriented Iran
But this
comes to
isn't. But
power.
that doesn't happen. I
Yeah,
mean, it's
so I
already.
mean,
We know this is not going to happen.
yeah, if this scenario is not working, we discussed about this already, which is still there is maybe chance. Still, we are at the early stages of the conflict, but it seems it will not be quickly possible. The second scenario is the dragged conflict and the loss of control by the regime and the internal chaos in Iran, which Turkey will never enjoy. Uh, I mean, I know Turkey. There are already some people trying to cross border to Turkey, and Turkey trying to have some precautions to prevent an influx of the refugees. But Turkey witnessed this in a very terrible way in the Syrian crisis. I hope that Turkey learned a lot from that very bad experience and can get some correct lessons and not get involved into Iranian internal conflict as it did in the Syrian crisis, which cost a lot to Turkey.
But then, if
Uh,
I may, I mean, let me stop you for a
so
second.
it depends. It depends on how this situation will evolve. And one final thing is all the recent attacks against especially Iranian proxies in Syria, in Lebanon, in Yemen, and everywhere is helping Turkey geostrategically because Iran and Turkey are rivals in the same area for centuries, not just for decades. So uh, and Iran, who is getting weaker, means Turkey's hand is getting stronger. So
But
In Syria, for instance, this was one of the results of the Israeli attack to Iranian proxies uh, that led uh, Assad, an Iran and Russian ally, to topple, which paved the way to have bigger say or bigger influence for Turkey in Syria. So I think with the same token, there will be, I mean, geostrategically, a weak Iran is to the benefit of Turkey, but not an unstable, chaotic Iran. It is not to
yeah,
the benefit.
yeah, but I think comparing Iran to Syria is a big, it's a sort of a big stretch. Iran is 7, 8 times larger than Syria
Yeah,
territorially. It has completely different resources, different history, different, in just about every aspect. Iran is by far bigger, stronger, strategically located. And I think having a chaos in, you suggesting that Turkey could benefit from weaker Iran, but it also could suffer considerably if Iran is continued
yeah, it will,
to be destabilized. If Iran
it,
is destabilized,
yeah, it will
that's
suffer.
not gonna benefit
Yeah,
Turkey in any.
it will suffer badly from a chaotic Iran.
Well, that's may. I don't think it's inevitable, but it's potentially it's there. So, if I were Erdogan, and I'm making the calculation that you are just making, on the one hand, I'd like to see Iran. Let us say that this is his position. I would like to see Iran weaker. Uh, but he would not know what would that happen, what would that could lead to. It's going to lead to establishment of a new government once this one is completely collapsed, or there's going to be a chaos like what happened in Libya, like what happened in Iraq, like what happened subsequently in Afghanistan. In all of these areas, we messed up the situation. The United States basically had to extract itself so-called with its tail between its legs. So that could also happen in Iran. So I want to go back to Turkey. So if Erdogan need to calculate all of that, the good, the bad, and the ugly potentially was going to happen. So this is bringing us back to the where we started. That Turkey, best thing for Erdogan is try to help negotiating and enter the conflict. So he doesn't want to wait until Iran gets much weaker because this could potentially could backfire on Turkey just the same. So he's focusing on trying, at least based on what I'm hearing, reading, trying to mediate. Do you think there is any prospect? Would he succeed in any way? I mean, Erdogan's trying to mediate just about every conflict in the Ukraine,
Yes.
between Israel I mean, he throws himself into the basket. I'm a peaceful man. I'm ready to negotiate, mediate every conflict. He's almost like a Trump who ended 8 wars already.
Once it was trying to intermediate between Israel and the Palestinians,
And the Palestinian,
and Syrians as well, all the
that's
conflicts.
so,
Yes.
and has shown absolutely zero success so far as that goes. Do you feel is there any prospect of any success? What a new rabbit can he actually pull out to make himself relevant, given what you suggested? Because Turkey is a pivot. Could suffer dramatically from the oil supplies, instability, refugees. All of this could come back and hit Turkey.
Yeah.
So, what
I
measure?
think I mean there is a huge interest for Turkey to contain that crisis. Because of this, I think, as I said, from the beginning onward, Turkey was on the side of countries or actors telling Trump to be cautious, not to, I mean, and focus on negotiated settlement.
Right.
And Turkey suggested Istanbul to be the place of negotiations.
Yeah.
But Iran, I think, or United States, I don't know all the details, but they picked Genoa to have these conversations.
Yes.
And while these conversations, negotiations were continuing, that attack started, which is one of other question mark that why you did not give the chance to negotiations. So there are different opposing views that Iran was not close to deal, and the country who was helping these negotiations, Oman, is saying that they were very close to a successful result. We don't know which argument to buy, to accept. But saying this, I mean, even before Geneva talks, Erdogan offered Istanbul as a platform of mediation and his mediative roles. I think, I mean, when I look at the position of Turkey and its relationship with Trump, especially the personal relationship between Trump and Erdogan, and the Turkey's position as the only NATO's only Muslim ally, Muslim member,
Of NATO,
and
yes.
so Iran has always uh, there's a rivalry and respect between these two countries, Iran and Turkey. If you see, Iran is attacking all the allies in the region, including Saudi Arabia, but not Turkey. Turkey has also a base which is used frequently by the United States, but
Well, of course,
uh,
it's a member of NATO, of course, yeah.
yeah, and Erdogan was carefully making a statement that he was sad for the passing away of the Khamenei,
Right,
although
yeah.
he did not name who did the attack. So this is the balancing act of Erdogan. So I'm sure. I mean, in terms of ideology, Erdogan is very much close to the Khomeini type of political system.
Oh,
Although
yes,
they,
of course, yeah, yeah.
so I think, especially in their early years, Erdogan as a young politician, as a young person, they had admiration to what Khomeini did in Iran.
Well, I mean,
So it's a big challenge for them
yeah,
to be pragmatic and
yeah,
realistic,
yeah.
which Erdogan is successfully doing in last 4 or 5 years. He was in fight with Sisi, but then turned and made a kind of friend relationship, and with the Gulf states as well. I think Erdogan is already publicly, privately trying to reach out to Trump, telling that I could be the way to find a settlement, because since Iran did not attack Turkey, and this gives, I think, Turkey a chance, and because Turkey will be very badly impacted with the chaotic Iran.
Well,
I think they will be pushing. They will be trying to find a way, but will they be accepted by both Israel and Israel? In
well,
the
yeah,
past,
Israel,
Turkey had also
yeah,
good relations with Israel, which Erdogan lost this because
that's
of
right, yeah.
rhetorical approaches, especially, and
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
yeah.
Let
So
me
I'm not sure.
touch another issue because we can talk about this. I just want to go back to Turkey for a little bit. I mean, obviously, like you said, Erdogan see eye to eye, and with Khomeini, albeit they have a different kind of set of belief. The authoritarian, both are authoritarian. So in that regard, he also see eye to eye with the Trump because Trump is a tendency of being authoritarian is quite open as well. However, I want to go back a little bit now to Turkey's internal problems, um, and that is as you know, Öcalan was said, prepare that the Kurds, the PKK, will be prepared to disarm, and in fact, they started in a level of disarming, but Erdogan is not reciprocating because the PKK is demanding that if you want us to disarm, you need to release Öcalan from the prison. You need to guarantee us, rights. That is, we are a different ethnic group. We have our own right, our own habit, our own culture. It has to be respected. But so far, what I know is that Erdogan is not refusing to move forward unless he can fully verify that in fact the PKK is being disarmed. So there is a sort of a deadlock right now. I mean, they are talking, but they are really not making any progress because both standing on that particular principle. Now, in this particular, and then there's as I might have mentioned to you before, there's also the Kurds in Syria who are going to be incorporated into the Syrian military. And that's going to give Erdogan some kind of a break in terms of how we deal with the Syrian Kurds. But where do you see that? Do you see any prospect because you know the internal scene in Turkey, obviously much better. Do you see any prospect? I mean, it's in the final analysis, this conflict between the Kurds and Turkey is going back 40 plus years. Nearly 50,000 people have been killed on both sides. And would you suggest that Erdogan has now an interest in trying to conclude this particular conflict, which has been consuming Turkey for the last 4.5 decades? Do you see any prospect of success? And what would be the basis for such a success?
Yeah, I think there is a process, as you underlined, which started with the fear of what could happen if there is a PKK-controlled autonomous region in Syria. Now that fear is a little bit settled. Now there is a limited area controlled by the Syrian Kurds, and there is a decision agreement to integrate with Syria. That fear, I think, is reduced to a great extent in Ankara. Still, there is an autonomous kind of region, but it is much smaller area without main resources like oil, which was the case, and which is I mean, there's positive progress, and especially when the United States did not back the Kurdish groups against Damascus, I think Ankara felt a kind of relief on this aspect. So I think that brings us to normally that should increase the chances of a settlement. But the odd thing is the person who is leading this initiative, who started the initiative, is the most anti PKK person, Devlet Bahçeli, who is the leader of the Nationalist Party. There was a commission in Turkish Parliament to understand the dynamics of that problem, the Kurdish problem, and this party, the Bahçeli's party, each party wrote their report, their suggestions, what could be the way to solve this problem, and Bahçeli's party in their report did not name the Kurdish issue as the name of the problem. So they see it as a terror problem. And this is, we are talking about the leading person in this process. And of course, Kurds see this as a Kurdish issue. They like to have a constitutional recognition of their existence, their language, their political, cultural rights, etc. So I think Erdogan is so much dependent on Bahçeli because without Bahçeli's support, Erdogan doesn't have the majority in parliament.
Yeah, but let me
So
ask you.
it is
Yeah,
very difficult for Erdogan to give some concessions that will make Kurds happy and Bahçeli happy at the same time. So
well, but
that is the deadlock. This is the reason for the deadlock, I think,
yeah, but do
and
you
it is
think?
not easy. It is not easy to find a way to satisfy the ultra nationalists and the Kurds at the same time. And of course, to have a kind of autocracy, to do those in an autocracy, which you jail main rival Ekrem İmamoğlu and Selahattin Demirtas, who is the Kurdish leader of the Kurdish party,
Yeah,
for lots of years. So it's a very, very difficult situation, and I don't see a sincere effort on the part of the Erdogan to understand and to solve the problem. I mean, if it could be solved, that will be a big achievement for Turkey.
yeah, but let me ask you this. Erdogan prides himself. He's a powerful. I mean, really, very few people can challenge him. And he's saying he listened to this to the nationalist extremists who are really still consider the PKK as a terrorist organization. Um, um, but wouldn't you say, Erdogan, who's been inherited this conflict when he came to power, he inherited the conflict with the PKK. And he also knows, there's a tenure. Sooner or later, he's going to have to the political scene. Wouldn't he want, at a minimum, conclude or finish this particular conflict? I mean, isn't that an illusion on his part or on part of the gentleman that you mentioned his name? I forgot his name.
Yeah, Bahçeli, Devlet Bahçeli.
Actually, are they so uninformed or fools to think that when you have 20% of the Turkish population, which is Kurds, you simply can ignore that? And after all, if you don't settle the problem with the PKK, you're not going to settle the conflict with the with the Kurdish community in Turkey itself. So there are a link in there. So is he going to sacrifice the prospect of ending this horrific domestic conflict that's been going on for 4.5 decades only because he needs to satisfy the other side when he claimed that he can do anything he wants to do? I mean, shouldn't he consider the national interest first before even thinking in terms of who is going to oppose him? Best I know, I'm sure better than that, but nevertheless, Erdogan, if he wanted to make a deal, he could make the deal. I think he can make the deal, regardless of the opposition, because he can make legitimately the claim this has been going on for so long. It's about to deal with it. We have our population, 20% are Kurds, and the only way to settle this is by finding a solution that can satisfy this minority without, specifically when they are openly saying, we're not looking for statehood, we're just looking for some sort of autonomy. Why is it that Erdogan, who prided himself to solve all the problem, he wants to help mediating everybody everywhere, while he is failing miserably to try to mediate his own conflict at home? So what is his problem?
Yeah, I mean, as I said, it seems Erdogan has huge power, but it is not a power without some problems. Like his dependence on this nationalist party as a small partner in the coalition. Indeed, there is a coalition of Erdogan ruling Turkey now. Yes, he is as executive president, he is powerful, but when it comes to parliament, the AKP, his party, doesn't have the majority to pass any law without the support of Bahçeli, this nationalist party. So because of this, he is in an act of balancing, between the aspirations of Kurds and his dependence on this Turkish nationalist party. And Turkish nationalist party sees this as a terror problem, and the name of the issue is the process, according to the ruling coalition, is a Turkey without terror. It is not how to solve the Kurdish issue, which goes back to 100 years. It goes back to the early days of the republic. So there is an approach problem and a political problem. So I think if Erdogan, puts his interest or national interest at the front, I think I wouldn't say Erdogan puts the national interest at the first. So he
He's
sees
not, obviously, not doing that.
he likes to he became part of this initiative for two reasons. One is the fear of a PKK controlled autonomous region being formed in Syria. This was one of the fear. And the other is, in order to get re-elected in 2028, the current constitution is not allowing him to run again. So
Yeah.
he needs to get the more than this Turkish Nationalist Party's support. He needs to get some other political power support to make a change in the constitution. And the Kurds are entitled to that. Kurds have that power. They can do this. But in order to do that, they need to be satisfied. They need to be given some concessions or some rights. So it's a difficult situation.
Well,
I
then,
mean,
if I may,
if I were an advisor to Erdogan, I would say you need to be bold, more proactive to solve this problem, even if it costs you to your um, position. But Erdogan is not such a person. He never will do something that will harm his position. His priority is staying in power. He did a
he
lot
wants to
of
stay in power,
he
obviously.
did he did a
Yeah,
lot of nasty things to stay in power. Why you're jailing Istanbul mayor? Because he is the main rival. So that
yeah,
kind of a mentality you
yeah.
cannot expect to sacrifice, for the greater good of the country. So
But yeah, but then
this is the
again,
situation. Unfortunately, we are dependent on such a person that puts his uh, position before the country. Why the reputation of Turkey is in disarray. Turkey now is called as an autocracy because of this insistence of ruling Turkey forever.
yeah, but then let me ask you this, because when it comes to the election, obviously the Kurds in Turkey have a say, like
Yes.
any other Turk. So, and he's going to need them in 2028. He cannot, I don't think he can win the election outright without some kind of support coming from this massive constituency representing 15, 16 million people in Turkey itself. So he's going to need them. So wouldn't you think that because of that, he's going to have to start to make some significant concessions now in order to build up to get some kind of support when it comes to the elections. But so there is a contradiction in terms of his behavior. On the one hand, of course,
Big,
he wants to
big
know,
contradictions.
big contradiction, and I don't and what surprises me is that Erdogan, who prided himself to be decisive, to be clear, he actually is unable to handle major, significant domestic problem that he's been facing for all the time that he's in power. I want to shift to a little bit to something else. Now, since the coup of 2016, Erdogan has cracked down on Kurdish people in so many different ways, against the academia, against the military, against the media and everything. And to this day, I understand last year alone in 2025, he still jailed additional like 35 or 40 journalists. Thousands and thousands of people still in jail from the time of the coup that took place. And so the crackdown is, in a way, is continuing. Um, what is because I want to link this to the election. After all, many people have been affected by his horrific behavior. Uh, to what extent do you think this is going to impact? Because there's a new election. He's not the. It's going to happen. He will do everything in humanly possible to start to win this election. He's going to have to modify the constitution to allow him to run for another term, which is going to be another uphill. But he needs the support of every possible constituency in order to achieve that. A, to be able to go for another term, and B, to win it, and has to win it. And the odds are not all in his favor right now. As I see it, are not all in his favor. So there is a public disenchantment with his rule. There is a Turkish Kurdish problem is still pending. Again, this, albeit this, and you alluded to that, which is important, the concern of PKK creating a sort of autonomy in Syria is no longer a major problem for him, because the Syrian government would like to incorporate them, as we said before, to the military, so there'll be unified military in Syria. However, he still is facing all of these issues in front of him. And what is he going to do anything differently to change the dynamics between now and then?
Yeah, don't see much potential for change, unfortunately. Everything he's undertaking are making Turkey more autocratic.
Yeah.
And this pressure on free media continues. Already 95% of media is just, I mean,
Mouthpiece for him.
mouthpiece,
Yeah.
controlled media, and the
Yeah.
opposition, the Kurdish leader who was very successful is in jail, and the main opposition party's candidate for any potential presidential election is in jail, and they canceled his university diploma, not to make it eligible to run even for the office. It is a condition. Although his own diploma is discussed, people don't know if he has a university diploma, which is a requirement to be elected as a president in Turkish constitution. So and now his focus is to find a good replacement to him to continue his family rule. So this is the mentality of Erdogan, unfortunately. And the good thing for him, international or the global environment is very much for him. So, there is Trump who gave him the legitimacy that he is seeking. So he doesn't think that he needs another legitimacy other than this global legitimacy and controlling all the state power. Unfortunately, if Erdogan could like to do a favor to Turkey, it could be great things opening for Turkey now. If he makes little sacrifice than holding to power, he could solve the Kurdish problem. He could make Turkey a stability island in a very, conflictual, chaotic region. They could have the problem solved with many, many neighboring countries. But unfortunately, the power corrupts. This is the famous saying: the absolute power corrupts absolutely. This is what we are facing. And so he made Turkey a party state under one man rule. Institutions has no credibility. The military, police, the judiciary, and the public trust to those institutions are down. International standing of Turkey in those criteria, those indexes are down, unfortunately. So, uh, we were expecting Assad to make reform and to end the fight with the opposition, but this will mean end of his rule. So
Yeah.
Erdogan now is in the same situation. So we expect the reasonable people in Turkey and around the world expect him to reform, to move towards a democratic direction, but this will mean end of his rule, end of his family influence in the politics. Can you imagine Turkey? Turkey is not a perfect democracy, was never, but now he is considering to pass the power to his son, Bilal.
Mm-hmm.
So he is trying to do everything possible for this. This is shameful even to think. But this is the reality of Turkey. Unfortunately, when you destroy opposition parties, when you destroy independent judiciary, when you destroy free media, this is what you have. So one person and his whims is deciding such huge countries' future and the prospects, which is heartbreaking.
Yeah, and that is, I mean, this is exactly right. Absolute power corrupts absolutely, and that is unfortunately for Turkey, is unfortunately for the Turkish people, for that matter, and that is really sad.
And economy is
Sometimes,
not doing well, Alan. The economy was very important for Erdogan, despite all the terrible things he's doing. Economy was doing well, but now economy is also
yeah,
failed and not fixed.
yeah. The only thing, final observation, that when he came to power the first 10 years, he was a reformer in every which way
Yes.
possible, and everything was said, well, Turkey is going to be on an amazing trajectory for the future, and then comes the 10 years ago, this so-called coup, I still think he might have orchestrated that particular coup. Anyway, you have enlightened, I'm sure, everyone who's been listening about the situation in Turkey and what's happening today, and we can only hope that there'll be awakening. All these corrupt leaders, Netanyahu, Trump, Erdogan, and all of these corrupted.
I wish I could wake up someday and I see that all these gone and we have some proper democratically oriented clean politicians, but this will be a dream for the time being.
That will be our dream too. Thank you so much, Meet, for taking the time, and I hope we don't have to wait 6 years for the next podcast. Hopefully, we
Yeah.
can do so sooner than that. Again, thank you so much.
Thank you for having me.
That's my
Alon.
pleasure. My pleasure. Thanks again. Bye-bye now.
Thank you.
Bye. Thank you for listening to this episode on the issues. You can find this podcast on my SoundCloud page, and stay tuned to my social media accounts for the latest analysis and announcements.